So, this is a subject that's bugged me for a while, and it's something that stretches into a variety of media in our disposable Instagram culture. But since I'm a game dev, and games are what I know best, let's keep it focused on that. This was actually spurred by Jim Sterling's recent video on games politics. And while he makes some good points on the exploitation of political subjects by larger companies without commitment, I think it goes a bit further than that. It isn't that companies are dipping only their toes into relevant politics, but instead are simply creating the illusion that they are. The same way they craft dialogue choices to give the illusion of player agency, the games industry is actually quite good at this craft of creating puppet shows. But first, I'll set the stage. Obviously, we're all people living in this wide world with a large variety of issues being worked through in our societies. This, of course, includes game makers, all the artists, programmers, and various other disciplines involved. And if you spend any time around game dev spaces, you'll hear a lot of discussion that reflects that heartbeat of humanity, as people talk about issues they find important. You'll even find some giving entire talks to crowds of people about how we must use our medium to push forward society towards a better tomorrow. And everyone claps each other on the back as they nod and stroke their chins thoughtfully. It's all very inspirational to the new game developer, a world of creatives also concerned about everything happening in the world, vowing to use their talents to change things for the better. But soon you begin to realize talk is cheap, and so many of the verbal heroes standing on the table celebrating their own bravery, they haven't ever left the tavern to try and fight those dragons. And they never will. It's hollow. And it leads into an issue I call Toybox politics. You see, sometimes games do stretch out a bit and try and dip their toes into politics, with everybody celebrating them again for how great and amazing our medium can be. Like Detroit Become Human, a game that leans heavily into the issue of discrimination and mirrors the struggles of Black people in the West, with future androids going through the same struggles. Surely the opportunity for a brave statement in a world where the news is filled with police brutality and everyday discrimination. Except the politics in the game depicts discrimination of 60 years ago, an extreme form of discrimination, even going as far to show a scene of the androids riding in the back of the bus to mirror our history. This is the type of discrimination the vast majority of our society shrugs off as a distant memory and is removed enough from the discrimination of today to not be uncomfortable to anyone. Essentially, it's safe. The edges in any meaning applicable today have been taken away, so it's ready for the toy box. And that comfortable distance makes it enjoyable for even the racists of today. In fact, you'll hear these arguments from extremists, that things aren't that way anymore, no one is forcing anyone in the back of the bus, and racism is defeated. And that's the thing about Toybox politics. It only deals in issues that are old enough to not be that controversial, removed from players' lives and existing as a safe history lesson. Like Wolfenstein allowing you to fight Nazis. It makes for great PR about how a few extremists are angry, but the vast majority of our society are pretty anti-Nazi. And they are nothing more than cartoonish depictions of evil in the general consciousness at this point. The slaughter of the Palestinians, the Syrians, or any other group of victims in today's world, you won't be seeing many games that dare to go there until enough time has passed that any statement being made is meaningless self-congratulation of our society having moved forward. Even a criticism of the military in a game like Spec Ops: The Line only came over a decade after Iraq, and consensus had already shifted to make that safe and retroactively brave. BioWare allowing gay romancing options to an open-world game, another brave statement, if a couple decades late. Or perhaps another post-apocalyptic world, bold enough to say it would suck if the world got nuked. Well, kind of, but it would also be pretty fun and cool. The thing is, these are the most noteworthy statements being made by larger games. The bravest of the brave, marching out onto the battlefield in their armor, swords ready, only far after the war is over, if one was ever fought at all. They deal exclusively in politics that have reached overwhelming consensus. Perfect for the toy box and the easy media accolades. dancing on the edge of societal issues, gracefully dodging making any challenging statements while being championed as thought leaders. The thing is, leaders aren't found following behind a crowd, in games or in the larger world. The most controversial they actually get is having a woman on the cover for their promo art. And even then, laughably, the controversy is that the gaming community finds that controversial. But let's slow down a bit. What about indies, you may be saying? And it's true. Surprisingly, smaller teams with less money and more to risk do challenge the status quo more often. Or sometimes they don't, while pretending they do. Like Papers, Please, a game cheered as one that really makes you think, is underscored as a statement about border security and plays off terrorism panic, oddly falling directly in line with the status quo of the creator's home country as they debate building a modern Great Wall of China. Or That War of Mine, with players trying to survive in a war-torn city. It seems to skip making a statement other than, war sucks for civilians caught in it, but you gotta do what you gotta do to survive. Though at least they based the game on the real-world event during the Bosnian War in the 90s, for whatever that means. Then there's Undertale, a game that was celebrated for its non-violence option, which, in the end, really just makes a statement that being a murder maniac is mean and you'll have less friends if you kill everyone you meet. And finally, a few games have a gay character or two, or female protagonist in it, or games that make some offhand statement about global warming being bad, truly subjects shaking the status quo to its foundation, as the games play with the most modern-day, meaningless, meaningful issues. Sadly, that's about it, with the great majority of indie developers making just something fun that they hope will make a bit of money. Which, as long as they aren't on the table talking about their dragon fighting, is more than okay. And as a creator, I can tell you why it's difficult to create something else. First off, this all assumes a creator even holds opinions that are contrary to the status quo, since, by definition, the status quo is what most people view the world as. So from the start, challenging views are a rarity. But if you do find a creator with a different view, they might not express it, simply because it's scary to stick your neck out on subjects that large portions of people might not agree with. For example, when I released Labyrinth with a statement in support of WikiLeaks and whistleblower rights, I was the only one on my team to sign it, since those working with me were nervous to associate with that view. And just like we look back at whistleblowers of 50 years ago with admiration, no doubt down the road our society will retroactively celebrate their bravery. Of course, while simultaneously throwing rocks at whoever challenges the status quo of 2069. Anyhow, beyond the fear of going against the majority, there's the cold, hard reality that games are, by and large, toys for distracting people. Story often only gets in the way and takes more work while reducing the replayability. And even worse is a story that addresses issues people are trying to distract themselves from. Generally, we play games to have fun, not to be hit in the face with a deep discussion about a serious issue like, hypothetically, a rogue superpower that has a massive prison system designed to exploit its citizens for cheap labor. It's easier to address the, quote, hard-hitting subjects, like big companies only care about money or that black people shouldn't be slaves anymore. Again, don't get me wrong, all that's fine. There's plenty of room for toys in this world. But perhaps the core issue that I have is just the hypocrisy of it all. Game developers and YouTube personalities making brave stands against xenophobic remarks from some political figure, while in the next tweet proclaiming the real problem is those sneaky bastards from that other country. Or game developers talking for hours on stage about the importance of representation in games, who then go on to make a simple roguelike lacking that representation they preached about so much. Or those that fly their rainbow flags in their profile pictures while being part of a large company that regularly discriminates and shrugs off the issues when faced with it. Hollow. It's endlessly hollow, as we make believe we are the same heroes of 50 years ago that could stand against the crowds, before we turn off the computer and join the thralls taking part in the ugliness of today. I guess the greatest shame is that games could be more, the world could be more, and the vast majority will forever be looking backwards, shaking their heads at how foolish those before them were, while being the fools of the future.